Roy, thanks so much for joining us. This is the first COP that really has had nature and food much more firmly at the center of it. Maybe just to kick us off, what are Rockefeller Foundation's priorities in the food system space?
Well, first of all, we're so happy that actually food and nature are finally getting their due. When the Rockefeller Foundation's been in this space for 110 years, and when we took a look a few years ago about really evaluating the food system, you quickly realize that we've created a food system that actually destroys economic value from whatever angle you're looking at. And this is just the stuff that we can measure. Globally, it creates maybe $9 to $12 trillion worth of value, and it destroys $19 trillion worth of value. That just doesn't seem like a good food system to have.
Yeah.
And no one wants to be part of a value-destroying food system that is the number one risk for early mortality and the largest emitter of greenhouse gases and destroyer of biodiversity, right? I think we all want to feel that we're contributing to a better world. And I think from our perspective is we want to help the food and agriculture sector really move in that direction and achieve the potential I think we have. We can be an incredible net positive for the world, and right now we're a net negative.
Yeah. There's so many different parts of this food system that need to change, from moving towards more regenerative production systems to changing the formulation of foods, modulating the amount of sugar, fat, and salt that we put into our products, the labeling and the broad-based consumer education that's required. How do you choose where to prioritize as a foundation in terms of making the most impact in the shortest period of time?
Well, I think philanthropy has an important role to look at areas that other people may find uncomfortable to look at. We are also a convener to enable collaboration. It's interesting, I was talking to my 21-year-old son about COP and all the 87,000 people that are here, and he was like, it seems like there's a lot of talk. And I said, the vast majority, actually all the really important problems facing humanity are collective action problems. They require collaboration to be solved. And humanity isn't very good at collaboration right now. And this is an attempt, limited as it is, to do that. And I think we're seeing lots of actually good examples of good collaborative effort. And I think for us, to the extent that we can bring the public, the private sector, the NGO, the civil society, indigenous groups, to have a common conversation that leads to a more unified vision, that's a real positive in a world that is so complex and prone to polarization.
Yeah. One area I know that you are working on, which is intergenerational, is the school meals work, particularly in Africa. Could you talk a little bit about the philosophy behind supporting school meals and why you think that's such an important lever for food systems change?
Sure. Well, school meals right now is the largest public safety net in the world. And we know with climate shocks, with conflict shocks, we're going to need public safety nets. More and more, unfortunately. I think the 20 years facing us in humanity, for the next 10, 20 years, I think we're going to have the most challenging time humanity's probably ever faced. And we need to recognize that, build the systems that help us get through that. And school meals are an extraordinary leverage point for that. Not only do they improve learning, there's all these gender issues, women, girls are able to attend at much higher levels and feel safe, etc. But we think there's a real environmental dimension to that. One analysis shows that each school in Kenya, the large schools, can deforest up to 50 acres every year. And so that's 1 million acres just trying to cook food for the 10 million children of Kenya. If we can shift that to solar-powered e-cooking, suddenly that stops all of that devastation, deforestation. So there's this it's a great opportunity to bring in much more sustainable methods. there's also the ability to support more regenerative agricultural systems. We know, and we've discussed this, Chris, that regenerative agriculture is much more knowledge intensive.
Yes.
It requires more diversity. It requires more different kinds of inputs, practices, and but you can say, oh, we need more diverse system, but if we don't have markets for those products, that will never happen. And school meals, and institutional procurement in general, is a really fantastic way to create markets for products we know are important to diversify our agricultural system. So it's this multi-dimensional. There's a food system transformation, there's an energy there's an education transformation, there's a gender transformation. It's a real win-win-win-win. So we think it's quite important.
Just the last thing I want to talk to you about is this intersection between the environment and nutrition. For decades in the United States, we've had daily recommended allowances and we've had nutrition labels. Do you think we're going to move towards a world where we also have environmental labeling, and not just greenhouse gas, but land, biodiversity, water use? Do you think that would be a positive step forward, or that would maybe not change consumer behavior as much as we would hope?
Well, I think that would be positive, and I'm curious how you would do it. I sometimes I don't think it's actually even consumer behavior you need to change. You need to change the behavior of producers.
Yeah.
And what is interesting when you do even the nutrition labeling, there are a few people who look at nutrition labels, but
it's not driving that many purchase decisions.
There's not that many. Yes, exactly. And when Chile put their front of pack labeling, I don't know if you know, but they had a green triangle, a yellow, and then a black. Black
right,
is
like
really,
this Nutri-Score that's coming out now.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, and it turns out consumers kind of ignored it.
Yeah.
Producers did not, and manufacturers did not want to have a black label on their products, and it really drove that kind of behavior. So I think it's influencing the private sector, manufacturers and producers. I think is really positive. But I am curious, Chris, how it's a complex thing to put on an environmental label.
It is.
How would you actually do that?
I think the key here is that we're not only doing the nutrition or the environment, but actually that we have some ability to look at the intersection between the two. And so something that we've started to do with a bit of advice from Rockefeller Foundation is to think about what would a 2x2 in classic BCG fashion look like, where you're looking at the nutrient density of the product, but also the fully weighted environmental score, taking into consideration not only how it was grown, but also, and particularly relevant in Kenya, the energy sources for how it was processed, and what kind of packaging is used. So that when consumers are making those decisions, they're really feeling like if that product is in the upper right, they know they're making a good decision for both people and planet.
Yeah. What are some of those products? I'm curious.
That's a great question. The first and foremost would be fortified whole grains.
Oh, absolutely.
When fortified whole grains are grown, particularly with regenerative practices and in places which have, as Kenya does, 90% renewable energy, you're getting a pretty globally, environmentally and nutritionally competitive product. And so we're optimistic. The other one would be indigenous crops, right, which are a fundamental first step in a regenerative journey, but also provide more biodiversity, require less inputs, and can often result in more farmer profit. So at least in the cereal space, we think there are a couple of exciting examples, and we'd love to see that come to the fore.
I'm not surprised by the fortified whole grain, as you know. Like many people, I've been discussing this here at COP quite a bit. People don't understand that when we refine grain, we lose 20 to 30% of the volume and 90% of the nutrition.
That's right.
And so you have to ask, like, why is that? Why did that happen? Well, 30 years ago that made sense, because refined grain had a shelf life of 6 to 12 months. Whole grain only had 4 weeks. But now we have milling technology where you dry it a bit more, you make it a little finer, and it can have shelf life 4, 6 plus months.
Yeah.
So we have built systems that are based on assumptions that are no longer right.
Yes.
And what I love about fortified whole grains is just by shifting, you can actually, everybody wins. The miller wins, the government wins because it's budget neutral. Right. Kids are more nourished. And it sets it up for the next generation that will want whole grains.
Yes.
and kind of everybody knows whole grains are better for you, but we have to kind of change some taste profiles there.
We're excited as well that some of these innovations are actually from the global south,
Yeah.
and can go and then inform preferences and formulation decisions in the global north. And so we're really looking forward to sharing more of this work over time. Roy, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a great conversation.
Yeah, my pleasure, Chris. Take care.